Once again, hello everybody. It's Monday, it's the Deer Park, it's the Buddha Center, and perhaps the safest place you can be during a pandemic is Second Life. So let's get started like we normally do. Short period of bell meditation. You've all done this before. So I'll give you a moment, get into a nice meditation posture wherever you might be behind your avatar. And just remember, focus on the sound of the bell. If you get distracted, gently remind yourself, go back to focusing on the sound of the bell. Give you a moment, we'll begin at the sound of the bell. I go for refuge to the Buddha, the teacher. I go for refuge to the Dharma, the teaching. I go for refuge to the Sangha, the taught. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I have taken refuge in the Buddha. I have taken refuge in the Dharma. I have taken refuge in the Sangha. 3 pure precepts. Cease to do harm. Do only good. Do good for others. Bodhisattva vow. However innumerable all beings are, I vow to lead them all. However inexhaustible my delusions are, I vow to extinguish them all. However immeasurable the Dharma teachings are, I vow to master them all. However endless the Buddha's way is, I vow to follow it completely. Swaha. So today we're going to talk about engaged Buddhism. Most likely this is a term that you've heard. I use it on occasion. It's kind of a big thing among secular Buddhists, folks that are following that particular Buddhist path. The idea of engaged Buddhism is kind of something they like to turn to, and for good reason. So let's talk about right now. At this moment, there are protests going on, there's nonviolent civil disobedience, there's rioting, which of course is violent civil disobedience, and there's a lot of energetic social discourse going on all over the world. And for a variety of reasons, but right now there seems to be two main reasons that it's going on. The Black Lives Matter movement, because of the killing of young black men and women by police here in the US. And of course, the COVID-19 pandemic. How people are dealing with that, how governments and people alike are dealing with this pandemic. The question that many Buddhists in the West need to ask, if they haven't already asked, is how much should I get involved in these social movements? And is it appropriate as a Buddhist to get involved in those kind of social? Oh, excuse me. Right off the bat, I got to say one thing. This is why asking questions and opening up dialogue is so important in Buddhist practice, or let's be honest, in any sort of social activity. It is one of the keys to being an effective social self and an agent of wholesome societal transformation, even if it's just on a small scale. Because you don't know need sometimes unless you ask. And you might disregard something. Or you might develop an opinion of something and you really don't have enough knowledge to accurately do so because you've failed to engage in things like clear and concise. Or you haven't delved deep enough into a subject. So you're not asking the right questions or any questions at all and getting answers. I have a very good friend that always impresses on me, we make the best decisions with the most information. And you might think, well, that sounds totally logical, right? You always make the best decision if you have the most information. Most people will say, totally logical. But then those are the same people that don't actually engage that idea. They try to make decisions on the fly without thinking too much about it. Sometimes we have to do that. But remember, when we have time to put that space, that's what we want to do. So we can get the most information and make that best decision. And hey, look, you're not always going to be able to get all the information. That just isn't probable. But what you can do is gather as much information as possible, given time constraints, before you make a decision. Then you must remain open to changing that decision when new information is obtained. Now, strangely enough, this is a form of engaged Buddhism. Because you're following a pragmatic path. You're doing something to gain some wholesome personal character. You're probably familiar with the Shambhala Sun magazine. In an issue in 2003, John Malkin was interviewing Thich Nhat Hanh. I'm sure you probably know who Thich Nhat Hanh is, but anyway, he's a Vietnamese Zen Buddhist master, been around a long time. And he's credited with coining the term and the concept of engaged Buddhism. Now that's engaged with a capital E in Buddhism, engaged Buddhism. So John Malcolm is interviewing him, and he asked him this. He says, will you describe the origins of engaged Buddhism and how you became involved in compassion-based social change? Now, before I give you his answer, for a Buddhist, all social change arises from compassion. That's our foundation for why we want social change. But anyway, Thich Nhat Hanh answers this way. He says, engaged Buddhism is just Buddhism. When bombs begin to fall on people, you cannot stay in the meditation hall all of the time. Meditation is about the awareness of what is going on not only in your body and in your feelings, but all around you. When I was a novice in Vietnam, we young monks witnessed the suffering caused by the war. So we were very eager to practice Buddhism in such a way that we could bring it into society. That was not easy because the tradition does not directly offer engaged Buddhism. So we had to do it by ourselves. That was the birth of engaged Buddhism. In that answer, Thich Nhat Hanh was using his personal experience, but it's also an allegory for what we go on in our everyday lives. When he was in Vietnam, real bombs were falling on real temples and meditation halls. But we also have bombs that fall on us, right? Situations, experiences that feel like bombs falling on us. And we can't just retreat to the meditation cushion to get away from it, right? We have to do something. We have to engage. The engaged Buddhist movement then had its genesis during a time when the Vietnam War was bringing about a whole lot of suffering and a whole lot of unsatisfactoriness in people all around the world. Now, of course, the Vietnamese people were suffering the most, but it caused all kinds of different levels of suffering around the world. And the war, being a reaction to a political decision, and then having engaged Buddhism arise from that war, engaged Buddhism got tagged with the political activist label. It arose out of war. War was a problem, so they kind of got, that movement got attached to the war. Master Han realized that the war and its effects were causing not only physical suffering in Southeast Asia, but was also causing psycho-emotional suffering there and in other parts of the world. He came to realize the world-encompassing effect that the war was having. And so he comes to the U.S. in the mid-60s, and he experiences the fervor and the energy and the impatience of the active anti-war movement. Excuse me. Today, the engaged Buddhist movement and Master Han's order of interbeing are promoting peace and compassion around the world through wholesome societal engagement. Excuse me again. If you haven't looked up the order of interbeing, please do. It may be something that you find some interest in that you could help out with and get involved with. It is an excellent organization, and they do some really good work around the world. So it might be something worth looking up. Again, it's the order of interbeing. Myself, I encounter people who express that being involved with politics is unseemly or even just plain wrong for a Buddhist. It always stuns me when people say that. It's like, you're a Buddhist, so you're not a human being, so get away. It's like they don't believe that Buddhists are citizens of maybe whatever country they live in. Well, politics is a human endeavor, and it has the power to create and or alleviate human suffering and unsatisfactoriness. Buddhists are human. The intent of Buddhist practice is to aid in the alleviation of suffering and the promotion of human flourishing. So, politics and or any other kinds of social engagement are viable and logical pursuits. Excuse me. We've only got to look at history, study history, to realize that there are some connections between Buddhism and politics. When the Buddha offered teachings to King Pasenadi, when the Buddha got involved with the life of Angulimala, when King Ashoka altered the direction of his leadership as a result of his encounter with the Dharma, when the Dalai Lama fled Tibet, and all the way up to the current time, we can see these as examples of the Buddhists, or the Buddha, or Buddhists, or monks, or lay people playing some sort of role in politics. Politics is a component of human interaction. We are interdependent on each other in this world of politics. And I don't mean just within the country you live in, but look what's going on around the world. All our governments are interconnected and interdependent on one another. And that brings us to interconnectedness. Politics is part of that interconnectedness around the world. But that's not the only avenue for positive social change. In the above interview, Master Han alluded to the broader implications and responsibilities inherent in the practice of engaged Buddhism. In that interview, he went on to say this. He says, Buddhism has to do with our daily life, with your suffering and the suffering of the people around you. You have to learn how to help a wounded child while still practicing mindful breathing. You should not allow yourself to get lost in action. Action should be meditation at the same time, unquote. So he's just pointing directly to this idea of engaged Buddhism. It just means engage Buddhism in your life. Make it part of how you are and how you interact with the world around you. And we talk about this all the time. Now, Master Han has never been involved in the Engaged Dharma Insight group, directly. But the intent of our study and practice is parallel to the engaged Buddhist movement and kind of expands on that ideal, and we try to take it beyond the realm of the political, just like Master Han. The moral, ethical, and social concepts of engaged Buddhism arise from the ideals of pluralism, which we've talked about before, recognizing that there's more than one path to achieving the goals the Buddha set forth in the Four Ennobling Truths. As pluralists, it's important that we accept the commitments of others, but we maintain our own commitments. And we practice acceptance, and we talk openly and honestly with people, even if they have, and sometimes especially if they have differing worldviews. But we're looking for those worldviews that are directed toward wholesome personal development, wholesome societal development, and of course, human flourishing as an encompassing thing for all of us. And then, of course, there's pragmatism. The core teachings and concepts of Buddhist philosophy have relevance and value in the West, though the manner of applying them will need to differ. And in looking for ways to effectively deal with suffering, it isn't where a practice originates, or sometimes even whether it's Buddhist or not. What is important is it useful and productive in promoting some sort of wholesome transformation? That's what we care about. Theravada, Mahayana, Nichiren, whatever, Jewish, Catholic, really it doesn't matter. Is it useful and productive in dealing with the world's issues? As pragmatists, we engage daily in the pursuit of knowledge and practices that will help lead us to wholesome personal development and lead us closer to being an effective social self. This is the kind of social self that fully realizes that within this causal universe, we have to fully realize that what we do matters. That's engaged Buddhism. And then the third P, right? We've done pluralism and pragmatism. Well, the third P for this is practice. Buddhism is an action philosophy. It's just not a bunch of theories to be endlessly debated. It is an action philosophy. We practice. And so we also practice engaged Dharma. But engaged Dharma is also practice. Practice, practice, practice. Reading about Buddhism and studying the Dharma, it's going to teach you about Buddhism. Reading about or watching a DVD can teach you about meditation. Listening to a teacher will teach about practice. Only taking action, practicing the Dharma, practicing meditation, practicing the Eightfold Path, practicing compassion, practicing generosity, and practicing acceptance will result in your being a Buddhist. For a Buddhist, that practice may lead them to joining in a protest that they view as having could have a wholesome impact on suffering or discontent or unsatisfaction. It might lead a Buddhist to seeking public office in order to work within the system to achieve the same kind of goals. Commit. Take your belief in the ideals of Buddhism and apply them in whatever endeavor you pursue. That's engaged Buddhism. And this is a teaching taken directly from the lessons of the Buddha. Only through our own experience can we develop an appropriate worldview committed to compassion and the promotion of human flourishing. And this is what engaging the Dharma is all about. It is much more than political activism. It is social activism. And when we think social activism, political should be under that umbrella. Politics is not separate from our social lives, and neither is our social lives separate from politics. Though sometimes we might wish it could be so. But in the end, this is engaged Buddhism. It's how you use your practice. It's when you use your practice. So like a big old Enzo, that Zen circle, we kind of find our way back to politics. In engaged Buddhism, politics is just one of the myriad ways you can engage your community using the knowledge and practice of Buddhism. Buddhist traditions begin with a regular meditation practice that help us develop awareness and mindfulness. And then we begin developing compassion and altruism through the practice of generosity. Then we find ourselves practicing things like situational ethics and acceptance and vigor and wisdom. And all of these skills have great value in the social and political arenas where the societal transformations that we would like to see happen actually take place. So in engaged Buddhism, it isn't the Buddhist tradition one practices. It is what one does with the teachings of that tradition. Engaged Buddhism is seeing a need and taking action based on your character and your skills. This is what engaged Buddhism is. Again, it's just using your practice. That's why you hear me. I use the word engage a lot in these Dharma talks you've been listening to for so long. And that's why we want to always remind ourselves, engage that practice. If you have to, picture Picard standing by your right shoulder and just saying, engage.